and all that good stuff. Hey, folks, it is January the 19th, and today we're going over chapter 28, that's XXVIII, and that has to do with the First Macedonian War. The Romans are basically going to take over Greece, and then we're going to see the third and final Carthaginian War, when Carthage is going to be totally wiped out, and we're going to see that Rome is basically the master of North Africa, at least Italy. They haven't really pushed too far into the rest of Europe yet, and some of Eastern Europe, and definitely Greece. So, begin with that. First, I'm going to show the kids in the class the images I have while I do a little discussion of it. So, this is a modern map with more not current countries. Like, these lines have definitely been redrawn recently, but with more modern countries. And so your book's talking about the Adriatic Sea. And when it's talking about the Adriatic Sea, they're talking about here on the east side of Italy. That's the ocean you would see if you went to Venice, right? And, I got the canals, all that cool stuff. Well, that's all part of the Adriatic. And so we're talking about this because, remember, as Rome pushed throughout the rest of Italy, they're going to start coming up to the East Coast, and they're going to come across pirates. And pirates are going to be a problem all throughout the ancient world and throughout most of human history, as far as when people start sailing on a regular basis. And one thing Romans do not like is they do not like people who are armed thieves and stuff like that, especially on the ocean.
Then they won't like me.
So a lot of these pirates, of course, are going to have military-style forts with their own harbors, and essentially a lot of them are going to be like small cities. The Romans are going to lay siege to these cities. They're going to capture a lot of the pirate ships. Pirates were usually almost always executed upon losing battle. So they weren't as good as, though they were like used to fighting, they weren't as good as, say, like ordinary fighting forces. So they weren't able to hold up to a military that just recently defeated the best known navy of that part of the world and army. That's Carthage. And so the Romans learned a lot about sea warfare, about land warfare. So they were like the top dogs. So this is a coin from Philip V. He's going to be the king of Macedonia, if I remember right. And so if you recall, Alexander the Great swept through most of the known world at that time, created a vast, huge empire, but he died before he could really consolidate it. When he died, the succession was up, like who would get the land was up in the air. And so his lead generals broke up his territory into 4 parts. And these guys were known as the Diadochoi. That's just another way of saying and so the Diadochoi would have their kingdoms that they established from Alexander the Great passed down generation after generation. And so these guys are a few generations removed from Alexander. They've inherited parts of those kingdoms. But they still use the type of warfare that their grandparents and great-grandparents had used with the phalanx, elephant warfare, things like that. It was a very effective military system. However, the Roman legions are more mobile, are able to use rougher terrain as well. Whereas the phalanx, because of those long, super long Sarissa spears, their mobility is cut down, though they're extremely deadly headlong. But it's only if you can position them right. The soldiers have a hard time maneuvering themselves with all these poles surrounding each individual body. And so the Romans used this to their advantage. Philip V thought that with the help of another Diadochoi, I think it was Antioch of Syria, another one of those guys who inherited from his great-grandpappy part of Alexander's kingdom, are going to want to take over Greece, and they're going to want to take over much of modern day, much of Egypt. Hey, what?
for some reason I thought the back part where they're like hooking the spears, I thought it was water.
Nah.
And now, like, are these guys inside the water with spears?
Yeah, that would be
And I
like
know
super
you-
suicidal. Nah. But see, the Romans, like I was saying, they also learned a lot fighting Carthage, so they really
of spears.
refined their military. It is a lot of spears.
Didn't Turbo Diadophore combine the kingdom?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Like they kind of befriended. Like, well, in Syria, the one in Syria and in Asia kind of combined, but then the one in Asia, which was mostly just Afghanistan and part of India, vanished. You're going to have after Alexander, you're going to have India become a super powerful empire under the leadership of a guy called Chandragupta, and he's kind of like weird. He's going to be like a Buddhist pacifist, but at the same time, he's like a war leader. He's going to take over India and take over a lot of that stuff. But yeah, Syria is going to last a little bit longer. But all right, so these guys are going to take over. They're going to fight Rome. Rome's going to be like, look, we are already friends of Egypt. You don't mess with our friends. And Greece had asked Rome for help. And they're like, hey, if you're going to ask us for help, kind of like the mafia, yeah, sure, they're willing to hurt somebody for you, but then you're going to owe them a favor. Remember, Romans are like the mob. They'll do something dirty for you, but then you're going to be theirs for the rest of time. This is Antioch of Syria. I forgot which Antioch, so he's going to be another one of those, Diadochoi. And here you see he's wearing that Macedonian style crown, which is usually just a lead band, much like Alexander the Great had. So that's something they're going to keep traditionally. It looks like a Roman, honestly. So he's basically the guy in charge of Syria. So, all right. So once again, the Aegean Sea. This is where a lot of this is happening here in Greece. And so as they're doing this battle, we have the battle of, what was it, Dog's Head? Like Sinai or something. And so these are those Macedonian soldiers, still wearing those old style Macedonian battle helms, kind of look like Hershey Kisses. Which, it's useful. I mean, if you got an arrow coming down, maybe it'll kind of deflect it.
It's for headphones.
Or headbutting. Maybe they all had cone heads.
Like those dinosaurs.
And if you recall, a Roman general called Flammius or Flammianus is going to defeat the Macedonians there in Greece. The Greeks in Corinth they're holding a religious festival, which were games. Like a lot of times, Greek religious festivals were kind of like Olympic games, which would also have the arts, not just athletic contests. And so they hear he's coming. They hear that he liberated them, and so all these people are so super excited to have him in. It's kind of like it's like the apex of their relations. They welcome him. The story goes he has to flee just so he doesn't crush to death by the crowd, and everything seems okay. But I don't remember if this coin's from. I really don't. But here you got like a 4-horse chariot. Gosh, what was it?
I wonder how long it took to make those designs.
I don't know. Honestly,
For like every corner.
no. They make a cast for these things, and you would reuse the mold over and over. Oh yeah. So if you recall, when the Macedonians are defeated, they had an exile from Carthage living with them, and what was his name? Hannibal. Poor Hannibal. They're like, the Romans are like, okay, as part of our peace treaty, you had to give us Hannibal, and Hannibal had already ran through half the world that he knew about. I was like, I can't do this anymore, and so he kicks back some poison, and there's no more Hannibal. Sad end to one of the greatest generals in the known world.
Suicidal.
They had different. You remember, this is pre-Judeo-Christian people. They had different concepts and all that stuff. Dishonor was seen as a horrible, horrible thing to them. I mean, he was a Baal worshiper. I think his idea of death was different than ours. All right, so once again, we're going to have the Romans push back and defeat the Macedonians, also who were attacking Egypt. And this is going to lead to its No, wait. No. I'm sorry. This is from when. See, after the Macedonians are defeated, Carthage is going to figure out we don't really need you anymore. And so Romans do some very tricky things. They're going to do this throughout. We're going to see later on in their history, but they do something similar in both Carthage and in Greece. They're going to be like, hey, you're our friends. You're free, essentially, but you may not fight without our permission. Corinth doesn't listen. They go to war with the other Greek city-states, Sparta. And as you remember, Greeks being Greeks, they fight each other. That's what they do. Rome said, how dare you do that? They sent envoys down there to try to talk them out of it. The envoys were apparently abused and run off. And so the Romans come in and they totally, and I think this is like Echidna or something like that. Yeah, they totally annihilate Corinth. They come in, they ransack the city, they slay almost all the men, they sell everyone else to slavery. Corinth, being a very wealthy ancient Greek city, was full of ancient works of art, statues, just works of bronze and gold, all kinds of things like that, books. And they hauled off what they could, and they tore up, burnt down the rest, completely destroying the city. It will be rebuilt later, but this is where the Romans are like, hey, you're a friend. So that means if you don't do what we say, we'll kill you.
The question is, where are all these slaves going?
To Rome. We're going to see in the next chapter, like we saw in the extra credits video, Rome is going to get so influxed with slaves from these wars that normal Romans can't find a job anymore. And they're just going to be homeless and be like, I can't work. There's slaves doing all the jobs.
Is it going to be like the Spartans, always scared of slaves?
Well, that's going to come. That's going to come shortly. Yeah, that's going to come shortly, and that's going to be one of the dangers that Rome is going to have. That's similar to what the Spartans had, and later on, the southern states of the United States are going to have. They're going to have so many enslaved people that they're going to be scared of them because there's going to be revolts that kill people, and rightly so. You know, if you're enslaved people, why wouldn't you want to rise up and like get those people? Yeah.
Then why couldn't they just sell them?
Okay, they sell like, who? You're the empire. I mean, a lot of them were shipped off and sold right for profit where they could. But like a lot of these very well-to-do, wealthy Romans are like, man, the rich get rich quick scheme is to buy people and make them work for free. And then I get paid for the work. It's
Not for free. You still don't feed them.
well, yeah, there is overhead costs, but you don't have to pay wages. Yeah, and that's a big
So
deal.
they're probably getting the worst food that they can get.
Yeah, a lot of them were. Yes, a lot of them were. Roman slavery wasn't known for being quite as bad as the worst Southern plantation slavery some people might think of. But it could be brutal. But the Romans could be brutal to even free people too, with whippings, torture, and death and stuff, as we'll see later. So it wasn't quite as exceptional as far as corporal punishment goes, but it could be pretty bad, especially if you had to work with mines. Mines or on a boat, like rowing a boat. Those were known to be super, super bad. So once again, Cato the Elder. So he's good. Like your book briefly mentions, and I talked about him before. He wants to live like the old Roman ways. He's afraid that Rome is getting too rich and lazy. And he's going to be appointed as a diplomat to go check on Carthage, who's having problems with a country called Numidia. Numidia is a country that's kind of southeast of Carthage. And so the Numidians invade. Carthage, under its peace treaty, wasn't supposed to have a military, but they defend themselves. Cato says they are wealthy. They've totally rebuilt themselves. They could hurt us again. Let's kill them. Well, typical Roman fashion. And so there's some debates about it. They finally decide to do it. There's going to be a
Burn the city.
3-year siege. Yeah. The Carthaginians are going to do their best as an entire civil force, everybody in the city, to defend their city, to build up and reinforce the walls, to make weapons. If you remember, they gave concession. They gave up a lot of their children as hostages to the Romans. They they gave up their boats, they gave up their weapons and armor, and the Romans said, not good enough. You need to destroy your city and go away. And they're like, oh, we can't do that. So they decided to fight it out. It was when the Romans breached the walls, it was street to street fighting the whole way. Every last block had to be fought for. The Carthaginians, who had been put under this 3-year state siege, many of them starving, chose to fight to the death. And it was a complete and total massacre. It's known as one of the dark parts of Roman cruelty. They didn't take any prisoners until the city finally, the last survivors finally gave in. And of course, in typical Roman fashion, they were sold into slavery. Many of the ruins are still there today. I actually seen some of these ruins when I was in Tunis. It's mostly just, like this, like just foundations, right? The Romans tore down the walls, they tore down the buildings, they plowed up the fields, salted the earth, and their pagan priests placed curses upon the land. So much did they hate the Carthaginians. It was basically like they just wanted to nuke it until nothing could live there again. So
Medieval nuking.
Yes,
Everywhere.
Classical nuking. Scipio, however, was made a hero just like the other Scipios, and comes home to a nice triumph where he is celebrated as a hero who conquered their enemies. So that was a long one. Well, there might have been one point in U.S. history where we had a general talk about bombing a place so bad nobody could live there for 100 years. But
It's called.
we kind of we removed command from him for it to do that. It's nukes are bad. All right. First Macedonian War, kids. Let's go ahead and get our notes down. So, what happened here, essentially, like in a nutshell? Well, they didn't attack Rome. They attacked who?
The little like Roman city.
Philip V attacked Rome's allies, right? Well, Rome's ally Greece. Rome declared war. And what happened?
Philip died.
Yeah, and won. The Greeks were so grateful, remember?
Rome has favorites.
Oh, yeah, and they're going to treat later on, they're going to treat the Greeks better than, say, a lot of other of their holdings later on, because they're going to see the Greeks as being very refined, and well-educated, and stuff like that. A lot of cultural commonalities. So the Greeks celebrated it first.
But is Rome really the winner? Because there's Greek food, but there's not Roman food. Modern Greek food.
Yeah, a lot of what we think of as Roman dishes are kind of gross. I mean, yeah, like modern Mediterranean's like awesome. Like you're like, oh yeah, man, I love some spaghetti. But they didn't have marinara
Olive
back
oil.
then. Yeah, they had olive oil. I mean, that's what I like Greece.
No,
But
I'm
yeah,
talking
you
about
can think
most
about Mediterranean as a toll.
Mediterranean like restaurants, and especially like Zoe's and these big things, all like olive oil.
But
So
the
you
thing
can dip
is,
your bread in it.
like Greek food is very different from say like North Africa, right? They're very different. Like I don't think Greeks eat couscous. No.
What's couscous?
It's kind of like looks like millet. It's more like rice kind of in a way, but it's smaller. All right, celebrated at first. Hey, so Corinth was like, hey, those Romans did a good job getting rid of those Macedonians. So what did Corinth decide to do?
Attack Greece.
Yeah, so they attacked Sparta. And what did they do to the Roman envoys?
They made fun of them.
Yeah, and insulted Rome. Or insulted. And an envoy is like somebody you send to speak for your government. You can't send your whole government to the
Attack
country.
Spartas and ends.
So they're like,
And insulted.
Oh, I
they're like representatives. Okay.
Yeah. Rome's envoys. So, what did the Romans do?
They got mad and basically attacked
Just
one.
destroy the entire.
So Rome, yeah, completely destroyed them.
I saw everyone as
Someone
slaves.
and the other guy just punching me.
This entire thing just involves Rome destroying.
Just
Yeah.
destroying and selling their slaves.
Well, I mean, there's cynically people have said Roman peace is to create a desert, you know, so.
Wait, so he destroyed Corinth.
Corinth, yeah, so the city of Corinth, if you remember, way back when we were talking about Greece, Corinth was usually on the side of Sparta back in ancient Greek history. Corinth would sometimes stay on the sidelines, but they were a city that was always seen as number 3, almost as strong as Sparta and Athens, but not quite as much in the mix, right? All right, so we got that. And so the Greeks are subdued. Carthage is just kind of sitting there, and Cato the Elder, or Cato the Elder.
Mr. Carter the Elder.
All right, so what did we learn about him?
Like,
We didn't like him.
he's a guy that wanted to live normally.
Respect your elders.
Okay, yeah.
Why
So
you little
he hated wealth.
wealth and comfort.
Yeah, and comfort. He did. Because he saw his weakness. Loved like the old ways of Rome, right? Like, and if you remember from those first chapters we had on Rome, on Roman myth, it was all about like manliness as being like super, super tough, being always in pain and like really working super hard and always hating even like the lack of like the acceptance of pain always as like a measure that you're doing the right thing.
If you're in pain, you're doing it right.
So remember Cincinnatus, right? He was like a poor farmer. He didn't care about that, but he did everything he could for Rome. But then he went back being a poor farmer because he's like, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a Roman. And that's part of that ideal ancient Rome, like the yeoman warrior. So hated the old, so he loved the old ways. And what's he going to find out though?
That they're wealthy and they just chill out all day and they're just big liars.
Well, he finds Carthage is now rich again, remember? And he's like, oh my gosh, they're rich and powerful. They could totally fight us again. And calls for their destruction.
Probably make a good Spartan.
Yeah. This is where there's a lot of similarities between some Romans and Spartans. There really is, and I think you can find that in a lot of societies where, because Cato had a lot of similarities too, because in a lot of ways he was austere, wanted to live for his country, despised his country's enemies, and he wanted to control his countrymen in every aspect of their life. Kind of like a Spartan. He was a totalitarian. I mean, so he thought that obedience was more important than, say, freedom, you could say. So Carthage. What happens to those poor Carthaginians?
They get destroyed.
They die.
Okay, yeah, because so they defend themselves, right?
Yeah.
So defended themselves. We're not worried about from invasion. This angers Rome. And so the Romans laid. Where did they lay?
Siege.
Yeah, siege. So siege is when you're attacking a city.
Carthage.
And just totally destroy the city. So you see there's a common theme here, and this theme is going to be very similar for a while. Now, when we get to the Roman emperors, it's going to be similar, but a lot of their attention is going to be placed on more north and inward. All right, so Rome's influence. So now that Greece, and I didn't mention it here, but Egypt, talk more about Egypt later, North Africa and Carthage. So how's Rome looking right now?
Really powerful.
Yeah, they basically own everything. So let's see. At this time, they rule most of what they call the known world. So that's the big part there. All right, so kind of ties that up. So now we have Rome is, I mean, they're like pretty big. We're going to see they're going to expand more into Spain. So they've already taken a bunch of that from Carthage, the end of the Carthaginian War. They're going to move up into Germany and Austria and France, which back then they called Gaul. Then they're going to move up into Britain or Britannia.
What if the Gauls just surrender on invading?
Well, some Gauls did. I mean, the thing is, Gauls are kind of weird because, like, we often draw a distinction where these people were the Gauls; they were all the same. Or really, they were more like Native Americans. They all had like their own little tribes, their own little politics and stuff.
They're all French, so they just surrender.
Oh, the Franks weren't there yet. Oh!
Okay.
Nah, don't worry. They weren't frogs yet. All right. So then I come back. No lecture tomorrow because we have our algebra benchmark tomorrow. But we will on Thursday. All right. See you later.